The hidden costs of class in today's world. You do everything right. You work hard, follow the rules, save what you can, and pay your bills on time. You're trying to build a better life for you and your kids. And yet, you still feel like you're on a treadmill and someone else is slowly, almost imperceptibly, turning up the speed. You feel like you're falling behind, and when you look for a reason, it's easy to think the person to blame is you. But what if that's not true? What if that feeling isn't a personal failure, but a feature of the system we're all in? This is the story of the invisible price tag of your social class, and how it's costing you more than just money. The word class can feel a little old-fashioned, like something out of a history book about feudal lords and peasants. But class isn't dead in the 21st century, it's just gotten better at hiding. It's no longer just about your annual salary. It's about wealth, the assets you own minus your debts. It's about what sociologists call cultural capital. Knowing the unwritten rules, having the right connections, and speaking the right language in the right rooms. It's a complex web of advantages and disadvantages that starts the moment you're born. Today we're going to look behind the curtain of this system. We'll investigate the hidden costs that are charged to you based on where you stand on the social ladder. These costs don't show up on a bank statement, but they are incredibly real. They're paid with your mental and physical health. They're paid by your children's opportunities, or lack thereof. And this isn't just an individual problem. The core idea we're going to explore is that these personal struggles, multiplied by millions, don't just stay in our homes. They ripple outwards. They eat away at the trust that holds our communities together. They twist our political landscape, concentrating power in the hands of a few. In doing so, they lock entire generations into a cycle of inequality that gets harder and harder to break. This is the story of how the ground beneath the American dream is cracking, and why so many of us feel like we're about to fall through. The individual cost, the weight on your shoulders. The mental and physical toll. Let's start with the most personal cost, the one you feel every single day, the relentless weight of financial uncertainty. Behavioral scientists call this a scarcity mindset. Think of your brain like a computer with limited processing power. When you're constantly worried about making rent, affording a surprise car repair, or paying for a doctor's visit, that worry eats up your cognitive bandwidth. It's like running a dozen heavy programs in the background at all times. Every decision, from what to buy at the grocery store to whether you can take a sick day, becomes a complicated and anxious calculation. This isn't just a feeling, it's a measurable cognitive load. Studies show that people dealing with intense financial stress perform worse on cognitive tests, with a deficit similar to losing an entire night of sleep. It makes you more prone to mistakes, less able to plan for the long term, and more likely to make impulsive choices, not because you're bad with money, but because your brain is simply exhausted. It's a vicious cycle. The stress of being poor makes it harder to make the very decisions that could help you escape poverty. Recent data paints a startling picture of this mental burden. A 2025 survey found that a staggering 87% of Americans feel anxious about their financial situation, and for nearly 79%, that anxiety has gotten worse this year. For many, this isn't a vague concern, it's a constant presence. Over half of Americans report feeling stressed about money 3 or more days a week. This isn't just about spreadsheets, it's a public health crisis unfolding in our homes. The anxiety even has a name, stressflation, a term for the mental health impact of rising costs and economic uncertainty. It hits younger generations the hardest, with data showing 71% of Gen Z and 68% of millennials reporting anxiety over their finances. This constant mental strain inevitably takes a toll on our physical health. The chronic stress tied to a lower socioeconomic status floods the body with cortisol, the main stress hormone. Over time, high cortisol levels can lead to a range of health issues: high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, and a weaker immune system. This financial stress is so intense that 77% of people say the economic pressure has disrupted their sleep. Here we find one of the cruelest parts of the class system. Those with the most health problems are often the least able to pay for care. Welcome to the healthcare trap. It's not just about being uninsured. Many people, especially in the lower middle class, have insurance, but with deductibles so high they might as well be uninsured for anything but a major catastrophe. They might have a $5,000 or $10,000 deductible, but no emergency savings to cover it. The result? They avoid the doctor. They skip preventative screenings. A nagging cough goes unchecked until it becomes pneumonia. A manageable condition turns into a chronic illness. This isn't speculation. A 2025 study found that 60% of people have put off getting mental health care because of the cost. This creates a devastating cycle where money worries worsen mental health, while the cost of treatment blocks access to the very support that could help. People are forced into impossible choices between their health and other basic needs. Instead of getting primary care, many have to rely on crisis services or emergency rooms, which are not only more expensive for the entire system but are also ineffective for managing long-term health. The fear of medical debt is a rational one, a ghost that haunts millions of American families, turning a health scare into a potential financial disaster. The generational trap, education as a gatekeeper. The price of class isn't just paid by one person. It's passed down, an inheritance of disadvantage that often starts before a child even steps into a classroom. The American dream is built on the promise that everyone starts at the same line. But in reality, some are born 100 meters from the finish, while others are born in a different stadium altogether. This begins in early childhood. The cost of quality childcare in preschool has soared, putting it out of reach for many families. And this isn't just about babysitting. The first 5 years of a child's life are a period of explosive brain development. High-quality early childhood education gives a child a huge head start. Children from wealthier families are far more likely to receive this, while children from lower-income families often enter kindergarten already behind. That initial gap is then widened by a school system that is fundamentally unequal. In most of the U.S., public schools are funded primarily by local property taxes. This one policy is one of the most powerful engines of inequality in the country. Wealthy neighborhoods with high property values have well-funded schools. These schools can afford better pay to attract great teachers, have smaller classes, state-of-the-art labs, and a wide array of extracurriculars like music, art, and sports. Meanwhile, just a few miles away in a lower-income area, the schools are a different story. They are often underfunded, with crowded classrooms, old textbooks, and crumbling buildings. Teachers are overworked and underpaid, leading to high turnover. The extras that are standard in richer districts, like AP courses or robotics clubs, are often the first things cut, if they were ever there at all. We tell kids that education is the great equalizer, but we fund it in a way that all but guarantees unequal outcomes. As students get older, the game gets even more expensive. The path to college has become an arms race that favors the wealthy. It starts with standardized tests, where affluent parents can spend thousands on private tutors and prep courses. Then comes the application process with fees that add up quickly. But perhaps the biggest hidden advantage is the unpaid internship. In many competitive fields, a prestigious internship is a must-have. For a student from a wealthy family, working for free in a big city for a summer is a subsidized networking opportunity. For a student who needs to earn money every summer just to afford tuition, it's not an option. And then there's the final massive hurdle, the cost of college itself. Tuition has outpaced inflation and wages for decades. The total student loan debt in America has exploded to around $1.8 trillion. For millions, the promise of upward mobility through education has been replaced by a life sentence of debt. The average federal student loan debt per borrower is now nearly $40,000. This debt delays major life events like buying a home, starting a family, and saving for retirement. It acts as a giant anchor, preventing graduates from building the very wealth that would move them into a higher class. Beyond the money, there's another powerful barrier: cultural capital. This is all the social stuff, the way you talk, dress, your manners, your understanding of certain references, that helps you move up in a stratified society. It's knowing how to write a compelling personal essay or make small talk with a potential boss on the golf course. Kids from upper-class families absorb this naturally. For a first-generation student from a working-class background, these unwritten rules can feel like a foreign language they were never taught. It creates a constant feeling of being an outsider, even after they've made it. They have the grades, but they don't have the code. If any of this is hitting home, if you've ever felt that invisible weight or seen these barriers in your own life, take a second to subscribe. We believe understanding these systems is the first step toward changing them, and your support helps us push this conversation forward. So far, we've looked at the deeply personal costs of class, the toll on our minds, our bodies, and our kids' futures. It's easy to see these as individual tragedies. But they don't happen in a vacuum. They ripple outwards, shaping the very fabric of our society. When millions of people feel the system is no longer working for them, it starts to break down. The hidden costs of class aren't just a personal debt, they're a societal one. And the bill is coming due. The societal cost, the cracks in the foundation. The erosion of trust and community. One of the most damaging effects of huge inequality is the erosion of social trust. Think of society as a team. For a team to work, the players have to believe they're all playing the same game by the same rules. When it becomes obvious that some players started with a massive, unearned advantage, that belief falls apart. It's replaced by suspicion and resentment. This is a documented social phenomenon. Countries with higher economic inequality consistently have lower levels of social trust. People are less likely to trust their neighbors and their institutions, like the government, the media, and the justice system. When you feel like you're in a constant fight for survival, your sense of community shrinks. You pull back. The bonds connecting us start to fray. This is sped up by what's called geographic sorting. Increasingly, Americans live in economic bubbles. The rich live in wealthy enclaves and the poor are in concentrated pockets of poverty. We don't interact with people from different economic backgrounds anymore. This segregation starves us of empathy. It becomes easy to stereotype people you never meet. The struggles of the poor become an abstraction to the rich, seen as a result of bad choices, not a systemic problem. The advantages of the rich become invisible to them, seen only as proof of their own hard work. This fuels the slow death of a core American ideal, meritocracy. The belief that anyone can get ahead with talent and hard work is powerful social glue. But when people see a system where the richest 1% of households hold about 30% of the nation's wealth, while the bottom 50% hold just 2.6%, that belief starts to look like a joke. They see that the top 0.1% own more in stocks than the entire bottom 50% owns in total combined assets, and they understand that the path to real wealth is through owning assets, not earning a salary. When people see that the American dream is fading, they lose faith. For kids born in the 1940s, about 90% went on to earn more than their parents. For those born in the 1980s, that number has plummeted to a 50-50 chance. The rungs on the ladder of social mobility are being pulled further apart. When faith in the system dies, it leaves a vacuum filled with cynicism and despair. Why play by the rules if the game is fixed? The consolidation of political power. The erosion of trust is bad enough, but it's how economic power turns into political power that truly locks inequality in place. In a democracy, the idea is one person, one vote. In reality, money has created a tiered system of political influence. It starts with campaign finance. Running for national office is incredibly expensive, which gives huge influence to the tiny fraction of people who can write big checks. Even more powerful is dark money, spending by groups that don't have to disclose their donors. In the 2024 election cycle, these groups funneled more than $1.9 billion into federal elections, creating a shadow political system where voters have no idea who is trying to influence them. This influence doesn't stop after the election. The wealthy and corporate interests spend billions on lobbying every year. They employ armies of professionals to shape legislation before it even reaches a vote. For every one lobbyist for labor or public interest groups, there are dozens representing corporate interests. It's a total mismatch. The result is a policy feedback loop that overwhelmingly favors the wealthy. Research has repeatedly shown that the political preferences of the rich have a major impact on policy, while the preferences of the poor and middle class have next to none. A fascinating study using lottery prizes as a stand-in for a sudden wealth shock found that big winners didn't become more politically active, but they did become significantly more opposed to taxes on wealth, real estate, and inheritances. Their economic self-interest directly reshaped their political views. Now, imagine that effect scaled up to billionaires and multinational corporations. We see policies like massive tax cuts that disproportionately benefit the wealthiest. In 1960, the wealthiest Americans paid an effective tax rate of around 56%. By 2018, that had dropped to 23%. We see deregulation, weakened labor protections, and tax loopholes. These policies generate more wealth for those at the top, which they then use to influence the political process for even more favorable policies. It's a self-perpetuating cycle of power. This creates a government that is less and less responsive to the needs of most of its citizens. The feeling that the government doesn't care about people like me isn't just paranoia. It's a rational response to a system where ordinary citizens are being drowned out by the sound of money. This is a profound threat to the very foundation of our democracy. The path forward: rewriting the rules. Looking at all of this can be overwhelming, can feel hopeless, but we are not powerless. The system we have was built by policy choices, and it can be rebuilt by making different choices. This isn't about a single magic solution, but about rewriting the rules in key areas. Let's start where the cycle begins: education. We have to rethink how we fund our schools. Tying school funding to local property taxes is a recipe for inequality. We can move towards state or even federal models that give more resources to schools in disadvantaged areas, not fewer. This means making quality preschool and childcare a universal right, not a luxury. And it means tackling the college debt crisis head-on. Whether it's tuition-free public college or expanding loan forgiveness, we have to break the cycle of debt for education. Next, we have to rebalance our tax system. For decades, the tax burden has shifted away from the wealthiest and onto working families. This was a policy choice. Rewriting the rules means embracing progressive taxation, where those who have benefited most contribute a larger share. This involves closing loopholes that allow corporations and billionaires to pay shockingly low effective tax rates. A White House study found that from 2010 to 2018, the 400 wealthiest families paid an average tax rate of just 8.2% when their full income from wealth was included. The purpose isn't to punish success, but to generate the revenue needed to fund things that create opportunity for everyone, like education, infrastructure, and healthcare. We also need to strengthen the social safety net to provide a stable floor no one can fall through. In today's economy, people need a baseline of security. This means access to affordable healthcare that isn't tied to a job. It means robust unemployment benefits and addressing the affordable housing crisis. A strong safety net isn't a handout, it's a springboard. It gives people the security to take risks, like starting a business or changing careers. Finally, we must empower workers. For much of the 20th century, strong unions helped ensure workers got a fair share of the value they created. Revitalizing the labor movement is a critical step. It also means raising the federal minimum wage to a living wage and strengthening workplace protections. When workers have more bargaining power, they can demand better wages and benefits, creating a virtuous cycle of shared prosperity. None of this will be easy. It will be fought by the very interests that benefit from the current system. That's why the most important step is civic engagement. Real change comes from the bottom up, from citizens getting organized, building coalitions, and demanding that their elected officials represent them, not just their wealthiest donors. It means voting in every election, supporting organizations fighting for a fairer system, and talking to our friends and neighbors about these issues. We started this with a feeling, that frustrating sense of doing everything right but still falling behind. We've seen how that feeling is rooted in real, though often invisible, cost. A cost paid in chronic stress and poor health. A cost paid in unequal educational opportunities. These individual burdens add up to a huge societal debt, paid for with a loss of community and a political system captured by the wealthy. The story of class in the 21st century is the story of a game where the rules have been quietly rewritten to favor a few. The great danger is the despair this creates, the belief that the system is unchangeable and our efforts don't matter. But understanding the rules is the first step to changing the game. Recognizing that your struggle isn't just a personal failure but part of a larger pattern is a profoundly empowering act. It can transform despair into anger and anger into action. The hidden costs of class are not inevitable. They are the result of choices. And we, together, have the power to make different ones. The cost of class isn't just on your bank statement. It's a debt being charged to our collective future. The real question is no longer what it costs, but how long we're willing to keep paying it. What are the hidden costs of class you've seen in your own life? Share your story in the comments. Reading each other's experiences helps us see the bigger picture. And if you want to dive deeper into how we got here, check out our next video. Thanks for watching.